Serbian enemies love to dream about dividing the land belonging to Serbia. They say that Kosovo is just the beginning. They want to see Serbia reduced to the greatest extent. The funny thing is that they are not in agreement how Serbian territory should be divided. There are several maps they made. I am going to compare two maps I recently found on social networks. The first person wants to divide Serbian land between its neighbors. North Serbia or Vojvodina would be divided between Hungary and Croatia. Person number 2 wants to see independent Vojvodina. However, this flag is not the flag of Vojvodina. The flag belongs to an obscure political party that won 1 out of 120 seats in Vojvodina Assembly. I literally had to Google the flag because I didn't recognize it. Another thing is that the borders are not the same. This red area on the map on the right is left to Serbia. This means that the two map makers do not agree about what territory is part of Vojvodina. How strong is separatism in Vojvodina? Not strong at all. According to 2022 population census, ethnic Serbs make 68% of Vojvodina population. The rest 32% are divided among a huge number of ethnic minorities. The number of Hungarians and Croats in Serbia is dropping due to low birth rates, migrations, and assimilations. Let's compare 1971 and 2022 population censuses. In 1971, there were 430,000 Hungarians in Serbia. In 2022, there were 184,000 Hungarians living in Serbia. That's 57% drop. Today, Hungarians make only 13% of Vojvodina population. In 1971, there were 176,000 Croats living in Serbia. In 2022, there were 39,000 Croats living in Serbia. That's 78% drop. Also, it is reasonable to think that not all Hungarians and Croats in Vojvodina want independence. Declaring independence wouldn't be the will of majority. Both map makers want to give Eastern Serbia to Romania and Bulgaria. Unlike Vojvodina, Eastern Serbia has no status of the autonomous province. There are no defined borders of Eastern Serbia. The map makers cannot agree upon how much land to give to Romania and Bulgaria. As you can see, the land given to Romania doesn't have the same size or shape. The funny thing about this is that Serbia and Romania have good relations and have no border dispute. The only issue is the status of Vlachs. Romanians claim that Vlachs are in fact Romanians. Serbia recognizes Vlachs as a separate ethnic group from Romanians. In 1971 census, there were 57,000 Romanians and 14,000 Vlachs living in Serbia. According to the 2022 census, there are 23,000 Romanians and 21,000 Vlachs living in Serbia. That's 60% drop for Romanians and 50% increase for Vlachs. My guess is that some Romanians switched their ethnicity to Vlachs. On the other hand, Bulgarians did have aspirations to take Serbian land. Bulgarians invaded Serbia in World War I and World War II and committed huge massacres. Using force and intimidation, they tried to turn locals into Bulgarians and erase their Serbian identity. Present-day relations between Bulgaria are decent, but not close or warm. Although far-right Bulgarians might want to take Serbian land, it is highly unlikely to happen. In 1971, there were 53,000 Bulgarians living in Serbia. In 2022, there were little less than 13,000 Bulgarians in Serbia. That's 76% drop. I have to notice that Bulgarians are given more land than Romanians, even though there are fewer of them. The first map maker was more generous to Bulgarians than the second one. The map makers know that Bulgarians are their hypothetical allies in taking Serbian land. South Serbia or Kosovo is tricky. The map maker number 1 gives Kosovo to Albania. The problem with this scenario is that Western powers said they wouldn't support unification between Albania and Kosovo. Why not? The situation with Kosovo is a legal nightmare. Western powers reject the idea of self-determination. Kosovo Albanians are given independence by the West based on the claim that they cannot live in peace under Serbian rule. They weren't given independence because they want it. At least this is the Western explanation. Unification with Albania would be an act of self-determination. I'm not saying this cannot happen. At one point in the future, Albanians could declare unification. It would be interesting to see reactions from USA, UK, France, Germany if this happens. In 1999, Western politicians said they would never grant independence to Kosovo. Kosovo declared independence in 2008 after all these Western politicians retired. Never means less than 9 years according to Western politicians. Albanians have a project called Natural Albania or Ethnic Albania, and they are smart not to use the name Great Albania. But in natural, we're talking about Great Albania that includes Albania, parts of Serbia, not only Kosovo, Montenegro, North Macedonia. More ambitious Albanians claim also parts of Greece. Creating Great Natural Albania would cause several wars in the Balkans. However, Western politicians who are not as smart as cookies in the jar might think that unification of Albania and Kosovo would satisfy and pacify Albanians. Western politicians might sacrifice Serbian sovereignty and territorial integrity in order to save sovereignty and territorial integrity of Montenegro, North Macedonia, and Greece. Now, both maps add more Serbian territory to province Kosovo. We are talking about municipalities called Preševo, Bujanovac, and Medveđa. They are not part of province Kosovo, but have significant number of ethnic Albanians. According to 1971 population census, there were 68,000 Albanians living in Serbia outside province Kosovo. In 2022, there were 61,600 Albanians living in Serbia outside province Kosovo. That's approximately 10% drop. What happened? During communist Yugoslavia, Albanians were infamous for having extra-large families. In 1960s, 1970s, 1980s, Albanians were migrating from Yugoslavia. They moved to Italy, Switzerland, Germany. Their birth rates also dropped. They don't like to talk about this, but they are experiencing birth rate Armageddon. Let's analyze Preševo, Bujanovac, and Medveđa birth rates. Preševo, 1961, 36.2, 1981, 25.6, 2001, 22.2, 2020, 12.8. Bujanovac, 1961, 30.6, 1981, 20.2, 2001, 15.6, 2020, 11.4. Medveđa, 1961, 28.1, 1981, 14.9, 2001, 10.6, 2020, 7.9. In 2021, average birth rate in Serbia was 9.1. This means that Medveđa birth rates are under average, 7.9 versus 9.1. Preševo and Bujanovac are only slightly over the average, 12.8 and 11.4 versus 9.1. We should debunk the myth of Albanians taking over the Balkans. This myth was very popular in 1960s and 1970s when Albanians had crazy high birth rates. In 1999-2001, local Albanians in Preševo, Bujanovac, and Medveđa organized guerrilla groups and tried to secede from Serbia. They failed to get Western support and had to renounce their fight. This is known as the insurgency in Preševo Valley. Why isn't this more famous? The fighting left few dead, Albanians got nothing, and Yugoslavia was victorious. How many dead are we talking about? There were 27 dead Albanian guerrilla, 24 dead Yugoslav policemen and soldiers, 15 dead civilians, 8 Serbs and 7 Albanians. Why am I talking about Yugoslavia in 1999-2001? Yugoslavia existed until 2003. There was no Serbian army in 1999-2001. The army was Yugoslav army consisting of citizens of Serbia and Montenegro. Interesting fact, War I was the last time actual Serbian army fought against anyone. Today, some suggest that Serbia and Province Kosovo should exchange part of their territories. Majority ethnic Serbian parts of Kosovo for Preševo, Bujanovac and Medveđa. Serb enemies want to see Serbia lose whole Kosovo and the 3 municipalities. Serbia losing the 3 municipalities is highly unlikely. This would be even bigger legal nightmare than Kosovo status. The idea of sovereignty and territorial integrity would be turned into total mockery. The West cannot afford this considering current war in Ukraine. Ukrainians are literally dying to defend their sovereignty and territorial integrity. Now we come to Sandžak or Raška. First, I have to explain historical situation. In medieval times, Serbia was called Raška after the capital Ras. This has nothing to do with Russia. Russia is called Rusija in Serbian. Ras was named after old Roman town Arsa. The remains of town Ras can be found near Novi Pazar. Ottoman Empire conquered whole area. This particular region was added to Bosnia. As a result of this, the population was majority Bosnian Muslim. In 1912, Serbia regained the territory of Raška. Local Muslims called the region Sandžak after the Ottoman word. Sandžaks were administrative divisions of Ottoman Empire. Serbia was called Sandžak of Smederevo during Ottoman era after town Smederevo. The word Sandžak means district, banner or flag in Turkish. Ottoman Empire liked to change and rename Sandžaks just to drive future historians crazy. There was no Sandžak of Raška. The Raška territory was divided into several Sandžaks. The most famous was Sandžak of Novi Pazar. But there were Sandžak of Pljevlje and Sandžak of Stjenica too. Now, to make matters worse for historians, Ottoman Empire took the region from Bosnia and added it to Kosovo Vilayet. Kosovo Vilayet is not the same thing as today's province Kosovo. Kosovo Vilayet was the first-level administrative division of Ottoman Empire. Kosovo Vilayet included much more land than province Kosovo. For example, the capital of North Macedonia, Skopje, belonged to Kosovo Vilayet. Now, some Albanians claim that Bosnian Muslims living in Raška Sandžak are in fact Albanians. There are 3 popular scenarios among Serb enemies considering Raška Sandžak. Independence, both map makers support this option. Raška Sandžak joining Bosnia. According to 1991 estimations, Bosnian Muslims make 62% of the local population. The rest are ethnic Serbs and Montenegrins. Some suggested that Serbia and Bosnia should exchange Republika Srpska, majority Serb part of Bosnia, for Raška Sandžak. However, in this scenario, Serbia would get more land and people than it would lose. Serb enemies don't like this idea. They want Serbia to give up Raška Sandžak and get nothing in return. This scenario could also lead to a new war in Bosnia. Bosnian War of 1990s was in fact a 3-way war between Bosnian Muslims, Bosnian Serbs and Bosnian Croats. Bosnian Croats might declare independence or try to join Croatia if Serbia gets Republika Srpska. Raška Sandžak joining Kosovo. This is completely bonkers idea. People living in Raška Sandžak don't speak Albanian. Only few people in the region declare to be Albanians. The Kosovo Vilayet they like to mention existed only for 35 years, 1877 till 1912. There is no historical reason for the people living in Raška Sandžak to feel as part of Kosovo. Now I have to mention difference in sizes of Sandžak on the maps. In 1912, First Balkan War ended. Serbia and Montenegro divided Raška Sandžak between them. The first map shows independent Sandžak without parts belonging to Montenegro. The first map maker wants only disintegration of Serbia. The second map maker wants disintegration of both Serbia and Montenegro. Montenegro is the smallest Balkan country. They cannot afford to lose land. Montenegro is also a member of NATO. Going against Montenegrin sovereignty and territorial integrity is not the smartest move. I will focus on Serbian part of Raška Sandžak. What happened to the numbers of Bosnian Muslims population in Serbia? Now, this is a tricky question. In the past, Muslims in Serbia registered as Slav Muslims. Today they register as Bosnian Muslims, ethnic Muslims, and even Serb Muslims. Thus, it is hard to compare population censuses in 1971 and 2022. In 1971, there were almost 128,000 Slav Muslims in Serbia. In 2022, there were 153,000 Bosnian Muslims, 13,000 ethnic Muslims, and 4,200 Serb Muslims in Serbia. It is impossible to say for the 1971 census how they felt. It is better to compare 2002 and 2022 censuses. In 2002, there were 136,000 Bosnian Muslims in Serbia compared to 153,000 in 2022. That's 12% increase. Bosnian Muslims are a rare ethnic group in Serbia to have increase in their numbers. Serb enemies tend to exaggerate this increase and present it as if Bosnian Muslims are doubling their numbers. The 12% increase in 20 years is 0.6% increase per year. Judging by this rate, Bosnian Muslims would need 166 years to double their numbers. What do Bosnian Muslims in Serbia want? Do they want independence or to join Bosnia? It is hard to say. Thanks to language, Bosnian Muslims in Serbia are more integrated into Serbian society than Albanians. Bosnian Muslim athletes represent Serbia in many sports. Some Bosnian Muslim political parties in Serbia cooperate with Serbian government. Bosnian Muslim singers and musicians are also widely accepted in Serbia. It is impossible to say how many Bosnian Muslims in Serbia would vote for independence. Next problem is the ethnic structure of the region. This is ethnic map of Serbia according to 2022 census. The blue represents majority ethnic Serbian regions. The dark green represents majority ethnic Bosnian Muslim regions. Bosnian Muslims have no control over whole Raška Sandžak. If they declare independence, it would mean fighting with local Serbs and Montenegrins. Some villages and towns in the region are over 90% ethnic Serb or Montenegrin. I could see total chaos erupting if Bosnian Muslims declare independence. Personally, I don't think Sandžak independence movement would get support from the West, unless the world is going in the direction of city-states. This would mean disintegration of all states around the world, which would be a little too radical. In this hypothetical case, Serb enemies could see disintegration of their own countries. What territories the map makers allow Serbia to keep? The land left to Serbia by the map makers makes no sense. These Serbian fake borders are not historical, ethnical, or political. Serbia gained semi-independence in 1817 from Ottoman Empire. In 1817, Sandžak of Smederevo became Principality of Serbia. Sandžak of Smederevo was nicknamed Belgrade Pašalik. Serb enemies like to threaten how Serbia will be reduced to Belgrade Pašalik again. Serbia expanded territory in 1833, 1878, 1912 and 1918. These maps do not show Belgrade Pašalik. This is Principality of Serbia, aka Sandžak of Smederevo, aka Belgrade Pašalik. I cannot compare sizes from the maps, but I can compare shapes. On the right is Serbia according to the first map maker. Shapes are nowhere near similar. Now I added Serbia according to the second map maker. Again, they are not similar. What would be my conclusion? Making maps like these is not good for anyone. If I made similar maps of other countries, I would have been accused of imperialism and warmongering. Changing borders, especially in the Balkans, can bring only wars, deaths, and destruction. Will there be border changes and wars in the Balkans in the future? Of course there will be. We just don't know when, how, why. What about NATO? The funny thing about NATO expansion is that NATO cannot intervene if two NATO member states are at war. NATO can only defend its members against outsiders. Most Balkan countries joined NATO, which means they are now free to go at each other's throats.